G'day and welcome back to my channel. Now it's been a few days, but as you can see I've got quite a lot done on the Varyag. Yes, I'm moving ahead in leaps and bounds. Now I drilled out all the portholes, his little pick. That was fun. That was my new Tamiya pin vise, which was a lot easier than drilling out portholes as I have done it in the past on both the Grassfly and the Arizona using my old pin vise, which used to be pretty bloody horrible to hold and also used to break. The Tamiya pin vise, I will recommend it as the easiest, nicest one. I used a 0.8mm bit and they 15 minutes aside, bingo bongo, easy as that. There's only about 50 aside portholes, so it's not as much as I think the Grass Bay had 200 portholes aside, 400 in total. The Arizona had about half that, and this is half again. So it's an easy kit really if you just drill the portholes out. And the lips inside of each of the holes. In fact, the holes are pretty well started. They've done a lovely job moulding this. So the holes are just about started, so the bit fits right in, and you're away. You don't even have to do a pilot up. Now I also drilled the holes in the bottom of the hole. Here's another pick, and that was to get the pedestals in. And that was a bit of a squeaky bum exercise, as I needed a 0.6mm they recommended bit, but I ended up using a 6mm bit. Oh dear. Yes. I ended up using actually a 5mm bit. It's the only one I had sort of that I could, was sharp enough to do plastic, and I had to go really slowly and carefully. It did open up the seam slightly on the underside of the hole, but I just cemented that back together again. A bit of Tamiya thin, wasn't a problem. But anyhow, the brass pedestals then fitted, and what I did was I fixed in the nuts, which is inside the hull. I fixed those in with white glue. And the reason being that you get a bit of shear sort of movement with something like a pedestal. And if I'd used CA glue, although it would have stuck at first, sometimes when you knock CA glue sideways, it's got a shear effect, it'll crack and split and fall off. That's why you never put your bloody rails on around curves with CA glue, because they'll just one bump, they just all go ping and they fall off. So they were done, and everything was left for quite a while to fully set and cure. And this is the beauty of having everything just dry fit. This is just a dry fit, by the way. The only thing that's really glued is the hull. Everything else on top there is just sitting there by gravity. Yes, gravity. Great stuff. Now, once I drilled out the portholes and I had done the pedestals, I went to ripping off all the little plastic rails around those decks. It's always a bit scary cutting into a perfectly good model and thinking, oh no, I'm going to wreck this thing. I've done a couple of these already, so now they're flat. They've lost their rails. So we'll be putting nice little P rails on there, and it's not a lot to do. I mean, it's not exactly a big job. It's only a small amount of railing. It's nothing compared to doing a whole great big battleship. Bit of curve in that one, but it's not too hard. That'll probably be the hardest one, but we'll cope. I'll show you how I do that. But what I thought I'd show you is when it seems like it's going to be the scariest thing in the world, it's not. So easy. These little plastic rails just sit proud there of the deck. So really, all I've done, and I showed this sort of on the Arizona actually, rest my my shear cutters, rest them on the thing, and cut, and cut. I can't go too far, I can't cut into the deck, so I know my height's going to be good. And then once I've got a bit of space, and I can actually move, then I can get in and cut a little closer. And I'm only cutting level with the deck. I can't go wrong. Absolutely can't. Just make sure that these are all parts, the ones that we want to come off. Otherwise you'll have a disaster. But no, look, they're all rails. I mean, it probably look okay just with the plastic parts on. You know, the Ruskies have done a nice job with this kit. Thanks, Zvezda. But I'm going to take it just that bit further, as I always do. So in she goes. This one's a bit of a pain because we've got to preserve that part in the middle there, so we have to be careful working around that. Try not to bugger it. We may have cut a little close. Doesn't matter. We can always fill that. So I found a dent in the kit. I'll show you that later on. While I was doing some work on the portholes and fixing the penis at the back of the kit, I actually found a bloody dent in the thing. I don't know if I did it. It was like that from the factory. Who knows? And again, I'm just resting this flat on the part, right? Because I've got a nice big flat blade. And you need to have a good set of cutters. And these ones, so these are lovely because I can get up really close and there's virtually no distortion. It's a tiny, tiny little burr mark there. That will stand out. Honestly, it will. I know, done this before. Got away with this sort of stuff a few times. Alright, so cut as much as you can off with your cutters, so you're level to the deck. You don't have to, I mean, you could go to the next stage without doing that, but the next stage is savage. So okay, so they're off, and now because it's a nice flat surface, this is a lot easier than what we're doing in the Arizona, I can tell you. Now it's a nice flat surface. You'll need something like, I've got this nail file here with a really rough side and then not too bad side, and it's pretty worn. I actually use this to sand the bottom of the hole, so I know it's a good one. Basically now, and I've only got to file down until the planks start to disappear, because when the planks disappear, I know that's it. So it's pretty easy. And using something flat, probably making everything wobble here. There we go, that's fine there, that's fine there. And then this one, and being careful not to wreck that part in the middle there, should be fine. I'll be able to give that a touch up later. And look at that, we're just about there. In fact, yeah, once your planks start disappearing, that's it. A bit more in that corner, I didn't cut enough off there. Yep, the planks are all disappearing there. Done, and out with my trusty toothbrush. Always keep a toothbrush on the bench while you're cutting and shaving and drilling and farting and screwing and everything that you do. It's handy to have. And then a bit of a nail file around the edges. Voila! Just like I bought one. So that part now hasn't been wrecked. It's fine. In fact, I could give it a buff up and make it look really smart, but the wood deck's going over the top of that, so we won't have to worry about that at all. I just rummaged off and found the little deck base, so that should now fit perfectly on there. And I'd cut a tiny bit off there before, but whenever I'm cutting into these little deck pieces, if there are any shards or little pieces left over, I keep them. So I've actually got the tiny thin piece that I cut off there when I was thinking, gee, this is too big, I better cut it down. And then I went, hang on, I'm missing something here. So I could put that in there, or I could actually cut something from the spare bits of veneer, or just not even worry about it at all. Basically, I probably could put that on there. I've got enough space to pop my railing on anyway, so, because the railing's not very wide. In fact, yeah, I don't even think I need to worry about it, as long as that exposes all the holes, which it does. So there, that's it. It's not anything to be scared about. You just need to have your wits about you and know what you're doing. And, cutting into the kits and removing parts, look ahead, plan, make sure you know what you're doing, and then just take your time, and away you go. I mean, I just barrel in like a bloody bull in a china shop these days. I've ripped apart so many kits. And invariably often I make mistakes and a big bloody mess. But I'm pretty good at fixing those up too. Anyhow, let's move on. As you can see, all the decks have come up nice and flat now on both ends. I didn't take the, over here, the very rear or top one, I didn't trim that off because, one, it's pretty fiddly and small, it's getting past the limit of my hands, and two, I thought, gee, fitting rails to that, it'll be equally as fitting. I thought, no, that one can stay just with the plastic surround, that'll be fine, because you've got to know your limit. I like doing the fiddly stuff, but only so far. Eventually it gets too small for me. Now, another fiddly thing that I created for myself, although Zvezda made it fiddly, all these decks are supported by pillars, and they're tiny little 5mm long but 0.5 millimetre wide little plastic tubes, and rods, and every one of them is joined, have a look at this pic, to the sprue gate in the middle. Why do manufacturers do this? If you join it on the ends, like the old Matchbox kits and everything, Airfix kits even joined the struts on the ends, sprue gates from the ends, so you could just trim them off cleanly and away you go. But no, putting a sprue gate in the middle meant that I would have to somehow figure out a way of holding the bloody thing, and because you've got to cut it off the sprue, you can't even clean it up on the sprue, so you have to cut it off the sprue, and then you've got to somehow cut that off and tie it. Too hard. I tried to do 2 of them, and they were bloody awful, and it was just too hard. And then I remembered I had some 0.5mm brass rods that I bought to do the railing on the submarine. And that just happened to be exactly the same diameter that I needed for all these pillars. So it was a very simple matter then to basically cut the lengths to the exact, they vary a little bit. They sort of, vary between 3.5 to 5mm long, but it's pretty easy to lay it down when you're cutting back with a rule and go snip, snip, snip and make up a whole lot of lengths, just a few if they're slightly over. And anyhow, they all fall down, they cement up underneath. So that's a fixed spot, but underneath the holes that run into the deck. So even if you've got a couple that are slightly longer, it doesn't matter, they fall through. The only reason this is sitting up and not falling through at the moment is I've put a little bit of tape underneath that deck. So it's actually sitting springing on that tape. So that was a simple solution. It was a hell of a lot faster. I mean, it took me probably 15 minutes each to clean up one of those little plastic ones, and I have 28 of these to do. I thought, what a joke. Whereas I did that entire sub-assembly in 15 minutes. Same with the back one. So what I thought I might do, put your teeth back in, Harry, did any? What I thought I might do at this point, there's this centre section here, and that also needs about 10, I think, little supports. And again, I'm going to do them with a brass rod. There's no way I'm going to, oops, fall on the floor. Don't worry, the carpet monster will get that for me. All right, let's move on, and I'll just show you how easy it is to do a little simple scratch job like this. It's not hard at all. All right, let's add the legs to that middle sort of gang rail thing that runs the length of the ship. I'll pull it off just in case you don't know what the hell I'm talking about here. It's this piece. Oh. Everything's just dry fitted at the moment, just basically so that I can get everything ready for painting later. Now, I'll move the old vodka rag out the way. It's good now with the pedestals. I've got a way of handling it without buggering it. I need to get a base. Now, this is step 7, and as you can see, B16 times 10. Now, B16... Oh, yes. Who'd want to know about B16? I have found them there before. I think they're these ones. Yep, there they are. B16. Those things. All right. Absolutely bloody tiny. So all I did with the other ones is I measured up basically how long they were. In this case, they've got to fit into little slots. It's just under 7. So if I cut 6.5, I should be right. So that won't be too hard. But what thought I'd show you right now, because it's something that's a bit unusual. This little fella. Now I needed some more sanding sticks, and they didn't have the ones that I normally like at the hobby store. So the guy said, "Oh look, grab these. You really like them." And I didn't like them. I got them home, and the rest of the ones in the box, the bag, I didn't like. But this one day I thought I'd give it a try, and I'll show you now just how bloody useful it is, because it was quite a surprise. It's quite a surprise to me. Maybe it'll be a surprise to you. I don't know. I'll find out the make and I'll try and post that somewhere. Now on the sides here, I've already done that one. There's a, where is it? Here's a little lump. There it is. You see that? Now I've cut that with a knife as best I can, but there's still a bit of gunk there I've got to get off. Okay, so you get in usually with your, whatever you've got, some vicious sort of cutting tool that you'd use. In this case, I've got a diamond file, so I'll just stroke it across here with the same direction until I get the worst of it off. Yes, all very obvious, Harry Houdini. What the hell are you on about, mate? We've got things to do, places to go. We haven't got time to bloody watch you just sand a friggin' rail. It'll all become apparent in a sec. Bear with me. There is method to my madness. All right, so you get that off until you can't feel it. That's the usual thing. You're gently rubbing because you don't really want to... Okay, so you get off, but it looks a bit sort of gunky, right? And normally you'd try and do something. I'd get in there probably usually with my 3M. Now this, it's got 3 colours. Start with pink. That is the roughest of the fine. Right? And that'll get rid of basically most of the burring. And then, lo and behold, because you're still holding it, you flip it over to the white, which is then a fine sandpaper. Right? And then, okay, that's looking pretty good, and you just about, normally you'd leave it there. Then you flip it over to the grey side, which you can only use once you've got the worsted off. That's a buffer. And I have done things with this where by the time I've finished, I could not find, because this buffer is so good, I could not find where I'd actually trimmed and sanded. It was that good. So I don't know, I'll find out what make they are, but this, or things like this, are good tools, and I never would have known that. Never would have thunk it. Yeah, so the fact you've got it all in one hand, you can do the entire sanding and polishing process in one go. And I know it's right because A, there's no bump, but not only that, I've got this lovely smooth feeling. So especially on things like aircraft where you don't want any sanding look at all, I've on the Spitfire, I use this to buff up and fix a few places where I cut sprue off, and honestly, when the paint went on, smooth as a baby's bottom, but it didn't smell as bad. Okay, enough of that. Let's get some brass rods in the bottom of this this sort of little gangway, and I'll show you how fast and easy that is. Now, to do this exercise, you're going to need some tweezers and some good ones, good ones that you can really hold. I've got some finer ones, but things tend to slip out of them, and the worst things are holding PE. These ones, even though they're sort of a bit fatter and larger, they tend to hold onto things a lot better, especially brass rods. You'll need some CA glue. I'll use the slow zap because it gives me a bit more time to cure. It's a bit thicker, so you've really got to be very careful with it because you can actually fill up gaps with it, and it can be actually seen. But in this case, the ends of my rods need to have little bumps on them. The original part on the sprue had little nodules on either end. So that'll be fine for this exercise. I need something to put the zap on. I'll need something to cut the brass wire with. Now these are a pair of Zerons that I got given by a friend, and they actually ended up being perfect for cutting wire. My other Zerons for cutting PE, they're far too delicate to cut a big solid piece of wire, but these really cut through the wire. They are bloody nice. So I think that's it. That's it. You'll need a rule. You need to know exactly what you're doing. Now, I knew it was 6.5 millimeters, and unfortunately the measuring on this is a different cutting board to the other one. This is my cutting board that I get scum on, as you can see, when I'm cutting things. Now, it turns out that 6.5 millimeters, I'll do it over here where you can see, 6.5 millimeters turns out to be exactly the second big one of those. So it's there. So I don't know what that is in your bloody inches. That's half an inch. Must be a quarter of an inch. Is that right? Is that how it is? I don't know. We don't do imperial in Australia. We're all metric. Yes, it's all metric. It's very French. All right, so I know that's the length that I need, and I can always test this theory as well. I'll show you in a sec. So these cutters allow me to go, okay, I'll just put that up against there. Stop the ping. If I cut this now, it'll ping, it'll disappear off there in the bloody carpet monster. So being as accurate as I can with an iPad in my face, hold that, cutters over the top. Notice I'm not even doing this in the air. Did the whole thing on the cutting board. Could you see that? All my fat hands in the way? Probably were. But basically, I left the wire on the board. And then once I positioned it, put my fingers either side so that it wouldn't ping. And the cutters, at least with these ones, because they're nice and pointy, my cutters went down and cut the wire on the board. A lot easier than sitting in bloody mid-air trying to cut bits of bloody wire and God knows what's going to happen, they ping off. All right, that's my trick anyway. That's how I do that. Now, just to confirm that I've actually got the part the right length, let's move a bit of this junk out of the way here. All right, so I'm looking for part 16. Part 16 is there. So again, my scummy tweezers are actually great because they will pick that up straight from the cutting board. And because they're round and flat, it doesn't tend to ping. Having said that, he drops it. He drops it because I fumble my fingers. There we go. Get a good hold on it. So again, I'll do a sight test. Oh, it's slightly long. It's 1/15 too long. Not a problem. Not a problem. Again, hold it. Get in. You tell I'm concentrating, I'm not talking. See? So these are ways that I find out how to not ping things, and also ways that if your hands are a little bit wobbly, which mine can be sometimes, depending on how the gout's treating me. So again, we go back to our kit, compare. I reckon that's a perfect match, as far as I can see. Glasses fell off while I was doing that. I'll play back the video and just double check, but I think we've got a perfect match. All right, now we'll move on to putting them into the into here and getting them all perpendicular. It's not as hard as you think. Now I've cut all of the 10 little brass rods. And I cut them all at once to make sure they're going to be the same length. It's a bit more dangerous if you cut one, glue one, cut one, glue one, who knows. And in this case, I don't have as much tolerance on the kit as I had with the decks. The decks had holes underneath which gave me a bit more leverage, but here this needs to be pretty precise, otherwise things just aren't going to fit. There'll be a little bit of give. So making sure my first one, which I knew was the correct length, I cut the others and then adjust them to suit or threw away the ones I didn't need. Still, that only took me about 5 or so minutes, you know, not long at all. Okay, now to get them in and get them perpendicular. Well, it sounds like it could be a nightmare, but actually it's not. Watch this. So a little bit of the slow zap in my very attractive little, that's just a lid of some bloody container. And when it gets too manky, you can literally shear all the CA off. And remember I said CA glue shears and snaps? Well, literally, if you give it a bit of a push, all that CA glue will just ping off. So getting the little brass rod, come on, cooperate, little bastard, firmly in my grip. A little dab will do ya. And then we'll pick this first one, hole here, and we'll try and get it as good as we can. Now, zap is very slow, so I need to count to 10, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then I can let it go and it sort of sits there, but I've got play. And what I do is I put this over the cutting board like so. Hopefully I can see what you can see, right? And I line up. And then that'll tell me what's perpendicular. Right, so I know I need to go just over a bit. It's already starting to stick nicely. Okay, so hopefully we can both see the same thing. All right, so let's correct that way. And then this way, again, I'll use the sprue part and I can see I'm way out. And I need to go across to there. The glue's just starting to set. It's getting really quite tacky. Double check, there we go. Easy as that. So that now I know is perpendicular in both directions. Now this really works well if you've got a slow setting glue. If you've got normal super glue, sometimes it just goes, at least in my heat, and then, you know, you've got all wonky angles. But at least with the slow setting zap, I've got a little bit of time. It'll give me that bloody 10, 15 seconds to move it around and position it. Now that I've got one, the rest are actually a lot easier because the next one I put in, I can line of sight, match it with that one because I'll be able to see straight away. I can line down it. And the same with these other ones I put in, I'll be able to line of sight. And once I get 2 or 3, I can even go in with tweezers and squeeze along the lines because that one will be set rock hard. These ones will have a bit more ply and away I go. So I'll work through now and I'll get all the rest done. That gang rail now is in for a dry fit, and I've poked it into all those little holes and pushed it down even a bit further than it needs to be. The reason being is that there's still a little bit of play with that zap glue, and that allowed me to do the final fit of just adjusting the legs so they're all lined up. I've done that with all the other ones, so once they'd glued on, they were close, but often they would just be that tiny bit out. You know, there's no way you can get it perfect by eye. So the zap glue allows you just that little bit, you can force the pins into the holes and then it just pushes against the zap glue. The whole thing dry fits, sets, it's perfect. So they're in. So because of that, this back section is, it's a little bit pushed back because that's actually lower than it should be. So that actually should sit a little bit higher there at the back. But that's okay. I would rather that these pins have time set. I've also left this piece here belongs in the middle there, which was pushing it up because my tolerances were so good that I didn't have much leeway to actually get all the pins in the holes. So this way I know that's going to be perfect. So when I eventually go to CA glue those, I know I can, I literally just pop the CA glue in all the holes, drop that down, it will fit perfectly. So this is what you do when you're dealing with things like this. Lots of dry fitting, lots of only gluing one half, making sure it mates the other half. This is what happens with ships. There's lots of little fiddly bits and you need to do that. Now, we're working towards getting a base coat on this of white, and then I'll also be able to paint the lower hull the green colour that I want. Now, the reason I'm building all the superstructures now and jumping around the instructions is they're all white. In fact, anything that's going to be basically white, and then I'm going to add the greebles later, I'm going to do now. So I don't really do the order of the instructions. I also need white paint on these decks because, again, all the little bumpy bits and hatches and everything, they all need to be white. So when I put my wood deck on, they'll be exposed, painted the right colour, and I don't have to paint them because I hate going back in and trying to paint all the fiddly bits. See, my wood deck works as a mask as well. It's great for lazy painters like me. So I'm nearly there. I could nearly paint now and put my wood decks on, it'll be away. But one thing I like to do with little superstructure sub-assemblies is build the rails on now. And the reason for me is I would probably find it very difficult later, and I'll probably be knocking all kinds of things off. I'll be knocking greebles and things off while I'm trying to fit rails around things in the middle of the model, right? Not the outside rails. Those I will leave to absolutely the last, because if I put those outside rails on now, they will get knocked off while I'm adding things. But the greebles and the bits and pieces that get added in here are not much. So I will add the rails to this forecastle area here, and I will add the rails to this, I don't know, rear castle. I don't know what you call the rear bit. The rear area here, I'll add the rails. They're not really that hard. And they'll be white as well. So that's another good reason that if they're on, cemented in, everything's white. Plus I'll be able to test fit my wood decks. I'll be able to do a dry fit on my wood deck, make sure they're not fouling with the rails while the CA glue's sitting. Although I won't use a lot of CA glue with my rails. I'll CA glue maybe the corners, but basically for the lengths I'll put white glue in. Now I wanted to talk to you about my penis. This back pointy thing sticking out of the bloody hull halves, which didn't seem to have any sense or need to be there. It is one of the supports of this little Admiral's walkway at the back there. God knows why, it's a stupid engineering, but the Admiral's walkway clicks on there and it's just one of the little pokey out bits. No need for it. Anyhow, I did some research when I found out that, and I realised there was also some little hatches missing. I had some spare pair, popped some hatches on each side, and there you go. Drilled out the portholes, bingo bongo. That was all fixed and made Harry-proof. So this is where we'll probably leave it for now. The railings need to go on and the stairs, but that's really another video in itself. That's exploring sort of the photo etch and how to do that. There's not a lot to do in this, and it's not that hard, really, probably only a couple of hours work for me. But it's Christmas Day, and I spent all morning here, and Bask is complaining and she wants her fish. So I've got to get out and get her a fish and get my curry going. So we'll leave it here, and we'll come back next time and get a lot more done on the Varyag. Isn't it a great ship? I'm really enjoying it. I hope you are too. All right, it's goodbye from Australia, and it's hooroo from Harry Houdini.